Hello everyone and welcome to the Gunpla Network. I'm the Spicer, and today's review of the Master Grade Gundam AGE-2 Hound comes to you courtesy of those fine folks at Canadian Gundam. Canadian Gundam is your one-stop shop for all things plamo and Gunpla here in North America. With flat rate shipping to the US and Canada, a vast catalog that's restocked regularly, and a private warehouse option, they've got you covered for whatever you need. When you're checking that vast catalog and placing your next order, don't forget to use the promo code Gunpla Network to save yourself 10% off. So kind of in quick summation as a comparison to the AGE-2 Normal. I'll go into it in more detail in a moment, but just like a quick little bit here at the top. They share the same issues, and I assume the double bullet has the same problem. It looks good. I like the way it looks. I think it's really good representation of what we saw on screen and its transition to plastic, but it has all the same problems. The shoulders are bad, the knee attachment to the calf is bad, the torso is kind of bad. I'll talk about that way more in a minute, but it's one of those things, if you just stand this on your shelf, you'll be fairly pleased, but if you're trying to pose it around, you're going to be pretty disappointed. Now, just a quick look at the frame. It's the same as the AGE-2 with two minor differences. One, it's slightly lighter in terms of its coloration, oddly enough, and two, the clear A is not in the chest, as another piece needs to slot in there. But outside of that, it is the exact same. Bit of a problem, because that was the problem with the AGE-2. It looks fine from a standpoint as far as the frame goes. I didn't really appreciate the build the second time around. It is what it is. This is not one I'm going to recommend someone that's just like, I want something different to build, because while this is slightly different, I don't think it's very fun, in my opinion. However, once you get the armor on, this is where it kind of starts to shine. This is its redeeming quality, if you will. Yes, it has the same problems the AGE-2 does, but I like kind of the more simple color scheme here as opposed to the AGE-2. I think they make great contrast with each other as well. So, if you have one, having the other on the shelf next to it is actually really cool looking, in my opinion. But I just like it. I mean, the darker colors help hide the lack of surface detailing, which is fine. I mean, it's not supposed to be overly engineered, overly surface detailed, but it is something that it blends together more, I think, than the AGE-2 Normal does. And I think that simple color scheme helps that. Now, as we kind of look at the top half here, there are a couple of differences, notably in the head and the centerpiece and the chest. The head, I think, is still one of my favorite head silhouettes in Gundam. It's distinct, it's unique, it has the weird Vegeta Scouter eye visor thing, which from a gimmick standpoint is very weird, and I'm very confused as to why they did it this way, but it is what it is. It works, and from a distance you really can't tell how it works, which is, I think, kind of the better part of it. The skull is fine. I do kind of wish they would have just done it in like a bone white. I know that's not representative to what it is on the screen, but I think the contrast really would have been nice. Same thing with the thing in the chest. But it's fine. I mean, if we really get to look into the head, the visor is this circular or semicircular piece that just slides down, which I guess works, but it does look a little weird when you get close to it like this. You do have the light gray faceplate, which I think does help break up the rest of the head. The V-fin is red and kind of curved back, which is a little different. I quite like that. It is a little fragile though, so I would be a little careful. And then of course you have the skull head plate thingy, and it works well. I do also like the yellow eye stickers, or the yellow eye piece that has the silver stickers behind it. I think that works really well. I think it's very striking against the rest of it. If you had, just regular green or pink, I think it would have blended in too much. I think the yellow is really stark and stands out. And for an eye, that's actually pretty cool, because a lot of the time that's not really what happens. As we move down to the chest, it's pretty much the same thing. This is where I will want to point out initially. I didn't mention it in the AGE-2 video, but the side pieces where the vents are have a quote-unquote gimmick, I guess, to where they're either supposed to angle down or be flat depending on what mode it is. So if you're in mobile suit mode, they're supposed to be angled downwards a little bit, and if you're in the Strider mode, they're supposed to be kind of parallel to each other, kind of flat, even. And that gimmick doesn't work very well. I'll explain it a little bit more in a minute, but this is kind of the best visual instance you're going to get of it. And then as we move down to the legs, they're exactly the same. There's nothing from the waist down that is different here, which is fine. I think the design, the visuals of the legs, fine. It's just the actual legs themselves are not. Now, I was able to actually replicate the box pose somewhat. It's not perfect, but it is fairly close. You do get a bendable wire for the hook gun, which is pretty cool. It's a little flimsy, but it holds well enough. It's fine. It's actually the lesser of the problems I had getting this pose together. The big one, of course, being getting the right shoulder to hold up in kind of that angle with the lance. And, of course, I had to compensate a lot with the arm there. But you can do the box pose, which is pretty cool. You know, it's not a pose I'm going to leave on the shelf, but I do think it's a nice, striking, dynamic pose. And it's always a plus to be able to replicate the poses you see on the box in real life fairly easily. Especially since the box on this was not like the model kit was the picture, right? It was a digital representation, so they could have taken some liberties there. And, well, I think they did a little bit. It wasn't too hard to get into this pose, and once it's on a stand, you really can get a lot more out of it, much like the AGE-2 Normal. Now, in terms of some of the other poses we have on the box and in the manual, we have him kind of lunging forward with the lance here, with the beam saber outstretched backwards. Now, these are the same beam sabers you had with the AGE-2 Normal, so you do have the little beam dagger portion that can stick out the back. I didn't use it here because it wasn't in the representation of what we saw in the box and in the manual, but you can do this. I will say this is also not super easy to do with the shoulder, but it can be done. I would not leave the kit in this kind of a pose for a while, because that arm is going to droop very, very quickly. The lance, well, it is attached to the arm quite well, and the arm is not really the issue here. It is heavy enough that it will slowly start to drag that down, and if you don't have it quite right, it's going to happen a lot faster than it would otherwise. Now you can also do the double beam saber thing. That's a signature Asimo move. Looks good. Once again, the beam sabers here are solid. They're probably the best in terms of being able to work with the shoulders, and it's very minor, but in these three shots, the legs have been fairly similar, but they have been a little different. You can pose the legs around to do more dynamic stuff with them, but there's just not a lot to write home about there. This is really the beam sabers. And I do think that the binders here work a little bit better because they don't stick up above the shoulder, so they don't run into the head as much, and they're a little bit more subdued. They're a little more subtle, so they get out of the way a lot easier. They feel like they're one piece, but they're really three different pieces, so you can kind of mess with it and get it to work as you need in different poses. A lot easier than you could with the AGE-2 Normal. Now, if you want to do ground poses, you can. Once again, the legs here are a little finicky, but if you want to do kind of a wide-legged pose here where you're shooting these double grappling hook guns, you can. And you have two wires. You could do this. This is actually probably... I still think the beam sabers are the easiest to work with on the shoulders here. The shoulders are less of a problem here, but it's just getting the bendable wire kind of where you want it. But it's cool that it comes with it. It's very easy to put back into its original kind of positioning. So if you do have it in kind of squiggly lines like this, you can straighten it back out really quickly. And it holds fairly well. Not a lot of weight there. It is a little hard to plug the end into the gun, but it, with a little practice and kind of just looking in there, you can figure it out. It's just a very small hole in the side of another hole, so it is a little hard to get the first couple of times. And this is where I was going to put the transformation segment, But guess what I did as I tried to transform this monstrosity? I snapped off the stupid ball joint that connects the upper torso to the waist. Needless to say, that's a pretty important ball joint. So yeah, I had to glue that back together. So you're not getting a transformation. I am sorry. I will give you what my thoughts would have been on the transformation now. It's bad. There you go. That's all you need to know. I could have just done the review of the AGE-2 right there. The transformation in this is god-awful. The torso unit is so tight, and trying to move it down is near impossible. I'm amazed I didn't break the AGE-2 Normal, but I did break this one. So you're not getting the transformation, and this is not going into any dynamic poses anymore. Because, yeah, that's a very difficult joint to put back together. Yeah, because anytime you move anything else for the most part, unless you're holding it in a very specific way and you're very careful, is going to push on that joint. So, some problems, to say the least. So, what are my overall thoughts? I mean, did I like this? Did I hate this? Did the transformation absolutely ruin both of these for me? Kind of. So if I had just went out and bought these, I would have never transformed them. So in the case of the Dark Hound, it would have been much better for it. But this is one of those things. I'm probably the weird one out in this situation. I never liked Transformers, like the actual toys, as a kid. So anytime anything transforms, I'm just absolutely already kind of at a base level not into it. And the transformation does make these worse. However, I will say the one real big transformation engineering aspect of this is the legs. Those I can work around. It's the shoulders that are the problem. The shoulder joint has nothing to do with the transformation. That was just a strange call on that joint. I mean, sure, yeah, you're supposed to pull out and then tab it back in to, I think, adjust the torso doohickeys, but you didn't really necessarily have to engineer it that way, and I think that's probably the single largest problem on this kit. The transformation in the torso, oddly enough, if you're not transforming it, relatively doesn't affect it. It's so tight in there that it doesn't really move, which is great if you're wanting a stable mobile suit. So, yeah, the transformation's not great. If you like transforming kits and you want a challenge, sure, I guess, check these out. But realistically, if you're not intending to transform them, great. These will probably be very nice kits for you. If you do like to mess with transformations and pose around a lot, I would probably not recommend these. Now, these are in a weird place as far as the representations. They're the only master grades, the only 1/100s of these kits that I know of. So, a lot of people would say these are the definitive versions. But they're in kind of a unique situation with the designs being a little bit more simplistic. I would honestly say you could get by with either the high grades or these. If you have more 1/100s or master grades, of course, these are going to fit a little better. If you don't have a lot of space on your shelf, but you do want like a little age display, or you just like these designs, the high grades work just fine. If you like to pose around, high grades are probably better. If you want something that has more shelf presence, go the master grade. I love the AGE-2 design. I love the Dark Hound. I'm so sad I broke that ball joint. But overall, if you're an AGE fan or you like the designs, these are not bad. If you hate transformations or you really like posing, I would say go with probably the high grades. But that's just my opinion. If you have built these, let me know in the comments below if you broke them, have the parts for the transformation worn down and made these just a jumbled mess of not sticking together, or if they held up. I'm really interested to see what you guys say in the comments down below, so let me know. And as always, I've been the Spicer here with the Gunpla Network. Please do your best to stay safe and keep on building.